Today we're going to talk a little bit about parity in the NBA. It's what we've all wanted, right? Correct? For oh so long, and now we have it. Because as of today, Monday, May the 19th, 2025, the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers are in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Minnesota Timberwolves are in the Western Conference Finals, and the only team that we all thought would be here that is here is the Oklahoma City Thunder, and it took them 7 games to dispatch of Nikola Jokic and waves hands, other stuff. Pretty remarkable what the NBA has put together. Meanwhile, the Mavs won a very fishy draft lottery, so they got Cooper Flag coming in to join Anthony Davis and at some point down the line, Kyrie Irving. The Rockets, will they make a move for a superstar? Have the Suns decided to go into the tank? Are the Bucks going to blow it up? But you know what? It doesn't matter because the Cavaliers, who had a brilliant regular season and then just fully flamed out, half their team got hurt, and the rest of the time it just wasn't going all that great. The Celtics lost Jason Tatum for a year. Parity only is getting greater. What does this have to do with fantasy basketball? A lot, actually. And I'm not going to spend that much time on today's show talking about the tie-ins because it's more of a, macro, big picture, this is why this matters for fantasy basketball sort of discussion. But parity is a good thing. Parity in the NBA means that more teams are going to be trying every year. Parity in the NBA is a 4 through 7, 8, 9, 10 seed thinking, hey, the Knicks and Pacers did it. Why not us? The Timberwolves were the 6 seed in the Western Conference. Mind you, they were a 6 seed that was 3 games back of a 2 seed, but a 6 nonetheless. The Warriors had a very good shot to get through if they didn't lose Steph Curry. You got a Lakers team that's got an offseason to get a big man and figure out how to play Luka Doncic and LeBron James together in the fourth quarter effectively. Clippers, I don't know what the Clippers are going to be. I mean, we'll see. Kawhi, all that stuff. So today's show here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, it's really more Old Man Squad basketball today because, I don't know, it's like a gift from me to me. Every once in a while, I just want to do a show where I talk about whatever's on my mind. Last week, there was a show where I pretty much yelled at myself for 25 minutes for taking risks earlier in a draft than I had told all of you guys to do it. Okay, that's fine. That was a little more fantasy related. This one is really just me talking about what's going on in the NBA right now. And it's fantastic. Is this the start of an Oklahoma City Thunder dynasty? I don't know, maybe. Anything can happen. We all looked at the Denver Nuggets. Okay, we all. I did. I looked at the Denver Nuggets and I was like, this is a team that's going to go to finals multiple seasons in a row. Like, what's going to get in their way? Other than themselves. That was what got in their way. Injuries to Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon. And frankly, whatever that front office versus head coach standoff that was going on that resulted in all of them getting fired, that stood in their way. The Nuggets probably needed to bring back Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, allow Christian Braun to sort of evolve into that spot. But again, nothing in life is guaranteed. We all thought the Celtics would push their way to at least the Eastern Conference Finals. Nope, they're done. And they were losing before they lost Jason Tatum. Let's remember that. The Knicks did what they had to do to get by that series. The Pacers have been very impressive. I think we all figured they had a good shot to beat the Bucks because the Bucks were a clearly flawed team this year. Anytime you go out and you trade for Kyle Kuzma, you have a little bit of a problem going on. Definitely did not think the Cavs were going to lose. I did not think the Cavs were going to lose. Here's what the odds, by the way, for the conference finals look like right now. Western Conference Finals, Thunder are a minus 375 series price favorite. That is fairly substantial. Timberwolves plus 300 as the underdog. There's a gap in there, so you can't play both sides. Knicks minus 150 favorite, Pacers plus 130 underdog. I'll be honest with you guys, I haven't a clue what's going to happen in these conference finals. So far, everything that I thought I knew has been turned upside down. It's like that fifth level in Marble Madness where you have to go up and right on the screen, it flashes everything you know is wrong. That's where I'm at right now. Game 1 is the Western Conference Finals is tomorrow. Thunder are a 7.5-point favorite at home. Pacers, Knicks the following day. That's Wednesday. Knicks are a 4-point favorite at home. Again, I have no idea. I would lean Timberwolves in that first one, if only because the Thunder had to go a full 7, so they're a little bit beat up. Pacers and Knicks, they wrapped their series up before they had to go 7. Those teams are relatively well rested. You might look at maybe an over in that first Pacers-Knicks game. Teams tend to sort of just throw a fastball in their first game of a series if they haven't had, a week and a half to prep for a particular opponent. I guess they have had a little bit of time. Thunder have had almost no time to prepare for the Timberwolves. The Wolves probably thought they were going to see the Thunder, so I'm guessing that's what they've been working on for the last week, but shrugs shoulders. How the hell should I know? I'm supposed to know these things. I used to be good at this back in the day. Back in the day being like 4 or 5 years ago. It hasn't been that long. I do think that, it doesn't have anything to do with this podcast, but I would like to take some time to get back into a little more handicapping next year. And that's a nice segue to our partners at Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all sports betting action. Baseball is in full swing. We got the NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. We got UFC. I don't know anything about the UFC. You're probably not even supposed to say the UFC. That's like, me referring to it as the Facebook, something like that. But, and this is the cool part, BetOnline has odds, news, scores, and live in-game betting while the game is being played. So if you're watching one of these games, and if you're like me, you're looking at it, you're like, I don't know if I was going to win this first freaking. What do I know? I've known nothing about anything that's going on so far. Well, you can in real time. You can see how it's going. You can see how adjustments are unfolding in real time and place your bets then. You think a comeback is coming? Bet on that. You don't? Bet on that. You got all these options. And if you don't want to wait for the ball game, and if you don't want to bet during the ball game or whatever it is, go play in the casino. No, you don't get the ambiance of sitting at a table with somebody blowing cigarette smoke in your face. But you've got the top Vegas-style games, poker, blackjack, live slots, all that good stuff over at BetOnline in the BetOnline casino. Overall, it's the best. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, so what does this mean from a fantasy standpoint? We're 8-9 minutes in. I've mostly just talked about reality basketball, which I still believe is super fun. I love the fact that there are 8, 9, 10 teams coming out of each conference that roll into the playoffs thinking, well, could be us. That's awesome. That's great. What it means for fantasy is that teams are going to be jockeying for position until the very, very end. Also, combine that with the fact that the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th worst records in the NBA have suddenly, seemingly legitimate shots to pick in a draft. And you've got a recipe for more teams trying. It's never going to be all. So I don't want you guys to hear what I'm saying and think, oh, Dan's telling us that tanking is dead. Nope. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we did a show where I was like, we need to be more cognizantly aware the teams that are going into a season with tank on the brain. Because there are some that are going to be pretty obvious. There's some that are going to be very obvious. There's some that are going to be kind of a little bit out of the blue, but like the Sixers this year, nobody thought they were going to be tanking this season. But as soon as Embiid and Paul George were just cooked, it was like, all right, well, screw it. Let's go get the 5th, 6th pick in the draft and see what we can do with it. Trade it, use it, whatever. It's just that there's a polarizing element now that maybe wasn't there in the past. There used to be, I think, a bigger contingent of middling teams that, well, the Chicago Bulls, for the better part of like 2 decades now. The Chicago Bulls are a glistening, truly terrible example of a team that actually, for fantasy players, has been kind of useful because they've played their guys even down the stretch when they very much should have traded them all away and gone tanking. They didn't. The beauty of that is, look, I mean, we're analysts at our core, and a lot of folks out there are watching these teams, and you all know when you're watching the Bulls, this isn't a team that's going to win a title. But all of these teams that are in the play-in are looking at what's happening in the NBA right now and thinking, okay, we can convince our ownership, our fan base, whatever, that we have as good a shot as another team that's 7, 8, 9 wins better than us because of the stuff that's happening in these playoffs. The Pacers finished this regular season 14 games worse than the Cleveland Cavaliers, the team that they just upended. Nobody seemed to think the Pacers were going to beat the Bucks, but they were actually the higher seed in that series. The Knicks just beat a Celtics team that was 10 games better than them during the regular season. These are big upsets. I know the Celtics were the 2 and the Knicks were the 3, so we shouldn't look at it and go, oh, like, they were 1 seed apart. These were teams separated by 12 winning percentage. The Pacers and the Cavaliers were separated by 17% in wins this year. That type of stuff, it's not Mavs Warriors from the Baron Davis We Believe year. What was that, like 2006 or something? But it's pretty crazy. And the more examples we have of this, the better it is for our middle tier fantasy teams. Middle tier teams. And then fantasy players on them would have been a better way for me to say it. A team like, well, basically anybody in the Western Conference between the 2 and the 11 this year, those are great teams to have players on because they played their healthy guys until they were mathematically eliminated, or if they weren't mathematically eliminated, played them until the very last day. So the Thunder, they were too far out in front of everybody, but the Rockets, the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Wolves, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Kings, and the Mavs, and the Suns, basically, although the Suns shut their guys down basically when Kevin Durant got hurt. These teams all played their guys until the bitter end of their mathematical season. The Suns got eliminated with a week to go. They were sort of for real eliminated with a week to go, but they were, we all know, eliminated with 2 or 3 weeks to go. But the Mavs, I know their team was mostly beat to hell, but they played their guys the whole way through. So did the Kings, Grizzlies, Warriors, like all the way up the board. Eastern Conference, similar beast there, although you had more teams that went into the tank. The Raptors went into the tank mode earlier with all their injuries. The Nets were sort of half tanking the entire season. Sixers, Hornets, Wizards, these teams were all in tank mode. But the Bulls, the Hawks, the Heat, the Magic, the Pistons, the Bucks, the Pacers, the Knicks, all of those teams were in that midsection where the pull to go win some games was actually great enough because they all felt like they had some kind of a shot. And now that's going to be reinforced. Now, this is not going to be like a pivotal shift. So I don't want to make you guys think that this show is about me saying, oh, there's a new way to analyze things. No, not at all. Not at all. What this is doing, what these playoffs are doing, what the regular season is doing, what the parity in the NBA is doing, is it is increasing the number of teams in the midsection. And we need that right now because the upper crust and the disaster bottom tank early. different things. Rest, they call it rest up at the top because they're so far out in front that a couple of losses, which are technically tanks, don't matter. Inconsequential losses at the top, very consequential losses at the bottom. So it's this weird, stick with me here on this. So what we're seeing in the NBA, because of the parity and because of the way they've tried to shift draft odds to de-incentivize tanking, which really hasn't de-incentivized tanking at all, is you're going to see the bottom extend itself a little farther up, but you're going to see the middle hustling. The play-in tournament also is a factor in this. I'm realizing that the collar of my shirt is a little bit wrinkled. And it's this confluence of like 4 different things that are all coming together to create the pocket of teams that we have to try to target. It is impossible. Hear me. It is impossible to know the exact list of those teams. So the best we can do is to look at how everything is shaking out at the beginning of next draft season in August, even in July if we want to, basically after free agency, and say, okay, do we think any of these teams are so far out in front of everybody else that we shouldn't be drafting those players? You could argue that OKC might be that, but I also think that there's a reasonable chance that the Thunder kind of come back to the pack a little bit next year, especially if they make the finals. Then I don't think they'd have their foot on the gas the entire season after a deep playoff run, just because it's a different regular season doesn't feel like it means as much at that point. You just see a little bit less intensity, not like a big, 15-win drop off, but, a handful. And then a handful allows other teams to climb up a little bit. And so maybe you want to wipe out the Thunder, fine. There were 16 games ahead of everybody else in the Western Conference. You can wipe them out. Do you think the Cavs are going to win 78% of their games again next year? I frankly don't. Do we think the Celtics are going to win 74% without Jason Tatum? I don't. So trying to eliminate the teams at the very top, probably impossible. Trying to eliminate the teams at the bottom is very possible. Wizards would seem to be still in tank mode next year. I don't know what to make of the Hornets. At some point, they're going to have to try to win a game, or nobody's ever going to want to stay there. Sixers are going to try to win next year. Nets are probably still moving into more tanking. Raptors, I don't actually know. They get all their guys back. They got Brandon Ingram signed now. Maybe they're going to try to win. What about out west? Spurs will try to win if Wemby's healthy. Pels, they have all these veterans. Jazz, is it finally time? I actually really don't know who the tanking teams are in the Western Conference. We'll have a better idea again in July, but this is what we need to be sizing up. And if we can stretch that midsection, Rockets, Lakers, Nuggets, Clippers, Wolves, Warriors, Grizz. Are the Grizz going to blow something up? I don't know. We'll see. Kings, Mavs. What are the Suns going to do this offseason? Are the Blazers going to try to be they were decent this year? Are they going to be trying to take one more step forward next season? I would assume so. We can solidify the teams that we believe are the safe ones to draft from. We'll do more on this topic as the offseason goes. That, again, was not really the main point of today's show. Today's show is just like a welcome back from the weekend. Here's what's going on in the NBA right now, because we're in the conference finals, and I pretty much haven't talked about the playoffs at all on this show. You guys remember, even as recently as 2 seasons back, I did a show every week where we talked about what was going on in the playoffs. I kind of dodged it this time because I felt like you guys, the fantasy viewers, were like, I don't want to tune into that show. But now I'm realizing that in the offseason, I can do whatever the hell I want. I'll give you guys all the crowd pleasers from August through April. But from the second half of April through the beginning of August, I do whatever the heck I want. And hopefully you guys will come along for the ride. So the point really of today's show is not necessarily that this is going to have some big impact on the fantasy landscape. But if there is an impact, it's going to be a positive one, because more and more teams are going to play their guys down the stretch, because they're looking at it like, what if you go back to the standings, what if the Pacers didn't have home court in the first round? What if Damian Lillard doesn't go down? These little things that a team that's looking at, a 6 seed or something like that. And kudos to the Minnesota Timberwolves because they did it as the underdog, at least from a record standpoint. Teams are going to want to get that extra little nudge. They're going to want to make sure they avoid the play-in tournament because as much as Parity is making a big-time stand right now, teams that were in the play-in, aside from the Warriors, got wiped out pretty quick. Some of it is because that team is better. Some of it is because that team is, or the other team is better. Some of it's because teams are just getting sort of thumped in the play-in tournament. What do we think? Do we think the Warriors' playoff run would have been different if they could have gotten out of the play-in spot? I truly don't know. They ended up playing the 6 seed, so it's not like you can say that they had to run into a buzzsaw. Teams are definitely want to avoid the 8 if they're going to have to deal with the Thunder. So that's another thing. Like, there's going to be jockeying for position at the very end. I think this is overall a really good thing for the NBA. I think it's great for the product. I think it's great for those of us like myself who believe that the regular season does matter. And I know that there's a very large, my wife, I did a Borat by accident there, is among the many people who are like, why am I even paying attention? She didn't want to watch the first 46 minutes of a basketball game. I'm like, what if a team is up by 20 at that point? Game's been over for a while. It's that same thing. Like, I like the journey. That's why I like Roto. I like every moment throughout a whole season. I think the regular season matters. And I think that hopefully what we're seeing here is that regular season does matter to some degree. Teams got to figure things out. Attrition matters. And that might be the point on the other side. But I mean, what are you going to do? Like, the Celtics rested their guys regularly this year, and they lost a dude. Sometimes there's just not a whole lot you can do about it. Sometimes the guy's just going to get hurt, and sometimes the team that stays the healthiest, and when I say sometimes, I mean a lot of the time, is the team that's going to make a run in the playoffs. Knicks have stayed healthy. Pacers have stayed healthy. Wolves have stayed healthy. Thunder have stayed healthy. Celtics have not. Bucks have not, if you're looking at the Eastern Conference. Western Conference, Nuggets haven't really. Aaron Gordon's been kind of in and out. I guess the Lakers were healthy, not mentally healthy. Warriors lost Steph. How am I forgetting about Steph? That's a big one. Ja was playing through a thing. Not that would have mattered all that much. Clippers were healthy, finally. Almost got it done. Nuggets were Jokic, just too much. So let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy what the NBA has brought to our tables on this fine mid-May of 2025. A land of parity, a land of awesome, hard-fought battles. Let's hope everybody stays healthy the rest of the playoffs. And let's take this towards the next fantasy season and make good decisions on who to draft, understanding that there is a clear delineation between the teams that are going to care until the very, very end and the teams that aren't. And I think if we want to try to pare down today's episode into one topic sentence, one thesis, it's that the in-between teams are being wiped out. You can't sit on the fence anymore. Because if you're in, you're in. You've got a shot because anybody can beat anybody these days, almost. And if you're out, you're out. And hopefully we'll know that earlier in the season and we won't have to deal with this, whatever that was. And I hope the Utah Jazz are not allowed to play next year because of the BS they put on this season. That's it for today. Short show. Just wanted to talk basketball for a little bit. Just wanted to celebrate how awesome these playoff series have been. I am Dan Vespers. Back tomorrow. We'll talk fantasy in the morning. I'm going to talk to Eric Ong in the afternoon tomorrow. That's a show that'll drop on Wednesday. We've got all sorts of good stuff coming on. Adam King dropped a show this morning on Old Man Squad. Noah Rubin dropped a show at lunchtime on Old Man Squad. This show is coming out late in the day on Old Man Squad. It's a frickin' field day. Come enjoy it. Reap the rewards with a like and a subscribe. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm Dan. So long for now.